Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. And today I'm showing up with one of my other hats on, the host of, for 21 years now, Folk and Great Music House Concerts. We're going to be talking about music, the arts, politics, and labor unions in this conversation with my friend and one of my very favorite performers, Tret Fure. Tret, thank you so much for taking time to chat.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be with you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. So I want to talk about the past, the present, and the future, and we've got a lot to cover. So you have been performing for decades and started at age 16, performing in the Midwest, moved out to California, fell in love, started touring with Spencer Davis Band, did all the things, have toured with Jay Giles and Yes, and so many big names. What are you proudest of from the past in terms of your performance?
Um, well, one of the things I'm proudest of is my first album, even though when I listened to it, I kind of cringe because I was 20, when I recorded it. But I had the opportunity. When I came to LA, I ended up falling into a really popular crowd. Lowell George of the late great Lowell George of Little Feat produced my first record. My circle of friends were Fanny, were Bonnie Raitt, were Lowell George, Little Feat, Freebo.
Rebo, who's still around also and
Oh yeah,
performed
still
with
yeah,
Bonnie Raitt.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was a very heady time, and I was just this little girl from the Midwest who fell in with the right people, and I mean it allowed me to do the work I wanted to do. My first album, Lowell, was one of my mentors, and he allowed me the creative freedom that I wanted and have always maintained through the entirety of my career. He taught me great lessons. Don't sell your publishing. Don't let someone tell you what to do. Don't sleep your way to success. All those things that, really helped, especially a young woman in those
Yes.
days. Yeah.
Yes. So you've now had 18 recordings,
Mhm.
and the latest one, as you know, Lavender Moonshine,
Yeah.
I just love.
Yeah.
I encourage anyone watching, check it out, buy it. It's so wonderful. Tell
It's my
me,
favorite. It's my favorite. Yeah.
is it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's magnificent. Tell me what you like about it, and tell me the trajectory through COVID for you in getting through COVID and then recording.
Well, I actually did an album before that during COVID, my pandemic album that so many of us artists did because we were home. I
Yes.
was fortunate in that album. It's called Stone by Stone. I was fortunate that I was working in Tacoma Park at Tonal Park Studios with my dear friend Charlie Pilzer.
Yay.
And because his studio had three large recording rooms and a large control room, each of the musicians could be in one room, and we could gather in the control room mast and still stay, 6 feet apart. So that was miraculous. So I could actually do, a fine recording, and it got me through COVID. My live stream shows that I did every 3 weeks, and all the other shows I did, I never stopped performing. I performed probably more during COVID than ever because I was always doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But and I didn't really get to tour that album much because I kept thinking, oh, I can go out next season. I can go out next season. No, it wasn't until the fall of 2022. But in the meantime, I was still writing. I'm always amazed that songs keep coming. And I had enough songs to do a CD, and I had always wanted to work with a wonderful local engineer by the name of Kim Person, who is also a fabulous artist. Um, she works with another woman, Lana Puckett, but she was Tommy Emmanuel's engineer. She's just recorded a bunch of people. And we decided to try. I did a demo with her, and the vibe was just perfect. I
Nice.
wanted to work locally. I wanted to be able to go home at night.
Yes.
And I wanted to work with local musicians that I had not had an opportunity to work with. So, and the thing about Kim is she is one of the finest engineers I have ever met. And Charlie, who's been my engineer forever,
Right.
agrees.
Our good friend.
And she's so good. She became my co-producer, and just the work we did was phenomenal. Her work is so clean and clear. Like you can hear my vocals over everything so beautifully.
So,
And that's just really, that's just one of the things I like the most about this album.
right. So you decided to make CDs and continue to make
Yeah.
CDs after albums. How are people playing them? What is the future, in your view, of recordings? How do you get the music out and to reach younger people and new audiences?
Well, I mean, I still do CDs for my older audience because
Yep,
they love
which is
CDs.
most of us,
Yeah.
or a
And
lot
but
of us.
all my stuff is digital as well. My website, tretfure.com, I have all my music, physical and digital, available. And that's something that I just did a couple years ago with
Yes,
my dear friend Glenn Rothell, who's a wonderful web designer.
he's the best and an alum of my series as well.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I love
So,
him.
but what I do now, because people can't, you can't get a CD player in your car, I found a car CD player on Amazon. Some people don't support Amazon, I understand, but it's part of our lives,
Right.
unfortunately. For $50, I bought a CD player that's just a rectangle with one cable out, a USB cable. It slips into my console. I can play CDs in my car. I can do thumb drive stuff, but I prefer CDs, and it's
I'm
a
with
way I
you.
can support out artists as well by buying their CDs.
Yes,
So I tell people at my shows that you too can own a CD player. I
yes.
should I should have a percentage of their sales. But I have sold more CDs as a result of that, because
Nice.
people now are so excited that they can actually inexpensively get a CD player in their car.
I still have a CD player installed in my car, but it's not long for this world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So how talk about touring versus performing online, and how can someone who's just starting in music earn a living?
Oh boy, that's the question. That's the question of the hour.
Yeah.
It is so hard to make a living these days. Um, I'm lucky in that I have a following that has stayed with me for years,
Mhm.
some of them for the whole 50 years, some of them for 40 years. People still come to my shows and say, "Oh, I saw you back in the early 80s." This is great. Well, I'm glad you're catching up. Fine.
That's great.
But you know, because I have such a solid fan base, I can still get uh, gigs out in the world,
Yes,
which a lot of people can't.
right.
But I also managed to maintain myself through the whole pandemic. I embraced online recording.
Mhm.
A lot of
Mhm.
people
Not
hated it.
everybody did.
I
Yeah.
would go to these webinars, I would go to these gatherings on Zoom, and people say, "I just can't do it." Well,
Mhm.
I learned. Well, first of all, I'm a recording engineer, so I had good equipment and I knew how to
Mhm.
set this stuff up early.
Mhm.
But I go upstairs to this room, I do my show, I go downstairs, I go to bed.
Right,
It
right.
doesn't get much better than that. And people have been very generous through COVID, and still, because I still do not I don't do them in the summer because it gets too hot up here.
Mhm.
But I still do a show every month or every 2 months online, because I have people from Germany, from New Zealand, from Australia, from England, Canada, who always show up for those
I love
shows, who
that.
will probably
That's
never see me live. So this is as close as they get. So
fantastic.
and when I wasn't doing it, I think it was last summer, I'd come up here because it's also my office, and I would miss it. I
Mhm.
would miss it because it's a different engagement. You learn that your audience is there. I have the good fortune of my wife would be I call her my Ebby to her Stephen Colbert. She would monitor my chat and laugh at my jokes, and that really helps. People look forward to her being there as
Yes,
well
yes.
as me. But
So
it really is another,
let's talk about that. We'll detour to
yeah,
that, which I was
yeah,
going to get to a little later. You are an icon and a legend in the LGBTQ community, and an early shero, have been recognized in that community again for
right,
decades.
right.
Talk briefly, if you would, about the role, the responsibility, and you've seen this enormous trajectory in our
Yeah.
lifetimes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I was lucky in that in 1980, I had been working in mainstream for the 10 years. I had released 2 albums. I was a recording engineer. I wasn't touring that much because it was hard in those days. But I migrated into what's called women's music in 1980. June Millington brought me to meet Chris Williamson. She wanted me to engineer her children's album.
Mm,
And I wasn't a big fan of women's music at the time. And I really didn't want to be part of Olivia Records. It was too,
right.
it was just
Niche.
too secular, too
Yeah.
niche. Yeah. And but I loved this. I read the script for Chris's children's album. I loved it. I signed on as her engineer, and we fell in love.
Yes.
And that was, that was my introduction and entry into women's music. And for the first 10 years of that, it was a phenomenal time, Cheryl. Thousands of women and a few brave men would show up in these giant halls. I mean, we played Carnegie Hall twice.
Mm.
We played Constitution Hall. We've played major venues
Yes.
all over the country, and women would come out in droves.
Nice.
In the 90s, when it was starting to be okay to be lesbian or gay, the doors opened with Melissa Farrick. I mean, not Melissa Etheridge,
Mm-hmm.
the Indigo Girls,
Mm-hmm.
Katie Lang. They kind of opened this door, and then
Mm-hmm.
Tracy Chapman
Mm-hmm.
opened this door for that. It's okay. You can be gay and you can draw an audience.
Yes.
So as a result, though, that little niche was not as necessary. I think it still is. We always need a room of our own.
Mm-hmm.
But things changed in the 90s. Audience numbers fell. But it was, I've been out since I was since 1970. So to fall into this network of this political arena of women's music, and I'm talking about the political, the personal as the political, because we
Yes.
were singing love songs, but it was a huge political statement in that time that we could do this all ourselves.
Yes.
Everybody involved in Olivia Records was a woman at the
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your politics because, and I am actually going to share screen for a moment and play a bit of one of the many songs on your current album that I love.
Great.
And hopefully this is going to work.
She wanted to teach, so much to share. Classrooms were safe, children were learning, no empty chairs. Watching the spark of knowledge unfolding, joy everywhere. Now the classrooms are war zones, the halls are all watched close. Locked in and locked down, now she carries a gun.
All right. Well,
Scared.
all right. So, one of your many political songs over the years, and on this album, Climate and Guns, and how effective, and does that cost you followers, fans, and dollars?
It's what I think my audience loves is that I stay current. I don't do old, even though I've been around forever, I don't do old music. I'm always trying to stay current. I follow politics. I want to write about what's important to our lives. And that's why I wrote The Great Backslide, which is my abortion, my whole, Dobbs decision song. And
Supreme
which is
Court decision outlawing abortion, essentially outlawing
exactly.
abortion.
Yes. And that was on radio before the album was even out as a single. There are just so many things that are important to me and important to our audiences in the folk world and in the women's world that I just feel it's important to address them. I think it's the job of the songwriter to make these difficult things that are happening in our lives palatable.
Yes.
And I don't mean palatable in a good way, but palatable in that we can take them in, we can deal with them, we can feel them. And
we have a way to talk about it and think about it.
Exactly.
So you referenced radio. So DJs used to be that folk music was mainstream, and now it's, as to use your word again, kind of niche. And thanks to people like Ron Olesko and Angela Page and Wanda Fisher, and there are some who really keep this music out there. How effective is that? And again, how do we expand the radio audience?
I wish we could expand the radio audience. I'm not sure. The people who play my music are from the Folk Alliance International Folk DJ list. This is a group of maybe 180, 200 DJs. Not a huge amount, but in our world, it's a great privilege and honor to have a #1 song or a #4 album.
Sure.
I've had several #1 songs. What it does, it doesn't necessarily, it does bring me some sales. It does increase my audience a little, but it's more about, it's in your bio. It's, you know, it's in your resume. You know, I'm an award-winning singer-songwriter. I am a #1 charting folk artist and in our world.
Yes.
And even though it's a limited number of DJs, it's very important. Those DJs are very particular. They're getting bombarded all the time
Yes.
with so much music.
Yes.
So to be chosen to be played is an honor in itself.
So let's talk about, I have my tea mug here. My happy weekend of the year is NERFA, which is the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance. So you and I have been at many NERFA conferences over the many, many years of my presenting folk and great music for 21 years now, which is
I know,
crazy.
that's crazy.
So talk about what is in it for you and for other performers from going to NERFA, from going to the International Folk Alliance or some of the other regional conferences.
It's an opportunity. It's not, you have to pay your way. It's basically pay to play, which we don't always agree with. But in this situation, you're playing, if you can get gigs there, you're playing for bookers, festival producers, DJs, managers, agents, as well as people who are there just to enjoy the music.
Yes.
And it's worth it. I've gone, you know, I started going to Folk Alliance back in 2000. I left my 20-year relationship with Chris Williamson, and John McCutcheon said, you got to come to Folk Alliance and you're going to join Local 1000. Well, I'd already joined Local 1000.
We're gonna get to
be
that.
on the board.
We're gonna get that.
Okay, yeah, but you're gonna be on the board. All I'm saying is that is how I got into going to all the different folk alliances.
Yes.
And I have been to so many for the whole time that I was on the board. But they can get you shows. For me though, like Farm has been the most productive.
Folk Alliance of the Regional Midwest.
Folk
So
Alliance.
there are 5 regions and then the
Yes, there are. Yeah. Okay. And Farm is the one that's in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And it's a very Midwest kind of feel.
Yeah.
And I have gotten more shows because what the producers do is if they like you, they will make sure you have a weekend of shows.
Nice.
Not just a show. They make sure that if you're coming from afar, you have a weekend of shows. That doesn't happen much, you know. Yeah. I've gotten some shows from NERFA. I think my favorite thing about NERFA is that I was on the Wisdom of the Elders 5 years ago with Sonny Oaks. At Farm, I was
Sonny Oaks, who was Phil Oaks, the genius sister. Phil Oaks' surviving sister. Yes.
Yes. And I gave the keynote at Farm 1 year. And this past year, I was on the Wisdom of the Elders panel at the Folk Alliance International in February. And for that alone, I'm grateful I went.
Nice.
You know,
nice. So again, Folk Alliance, and I was there, but I didn't get there in time for the Wisdom of the Elders. If you had a magic wand, what would you change about NERFA or Folk Alliance to make it even better for performers?
That's a good question. I think they really do a really good job. I can't imagine how they coordinate so many artists, how they choose, you know. When I started, I had a formal showcase at Folk Alliance International when it was in Jacksonville back in 2001. At that time, you had 4 acts a night for 2 nights. It was in a theater outside of a hotel. These things happen in hotels.
Right.
And you got a booth. Now, those were earlier days. Now everybody's there. So you've got not just one formal showcase, you've got rooms of formal showcases. And then you have opportunities to do late night showcases.
Called Guerrilla Showcases. And that's what I host. And I always have room for Tret Fure in my room every time.
You always have great rooms. Yeah. But I don't know what else I would do. I think what I would say is reach out more to younger people, but they're doing that now.
Yes. And more diverse artists, musically and ethnically.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a lot more women, which I'm grateful for.
Yes.
There's a lot more people of color, a lot more world music.
Yeah.
And it's a commitment for an artist because it's costs money. You got
Sure.
to pay for a hotel, you got to pay for the registration, you
Mhm.
got to pay to showcase.
Right.
But it
Not
is,
everywhere, but yes.
no, not everywhere. Yes.
Um, let's talk about Local 1000. So AFM, the American Federation of Musicians, has union locals, and Local 1000 is the local for traveling musicians. You are
Correct.
a longtime member, and were president for a long time, and John McCutcheon and many other performers who are dedicated leaders in that. Why is it important? And I got to brag that Folk and Great Music, my concert series, was the very first house concert series to sign a collective bargaining agreement
right.
with
Yes,
Local
you were.
1000
Yes, you
and
were.
made pension payments and all that. So what's
Mhm.
important about the union local?
Just what you said, pension. And when I joined, it was about getting a pension because folk musicians don't have pensions. Folk, the AFM was always established for symphonies or jazz clubs in New York City, or for local. You play locally and you pay dues and you put into a pension fund. But for traveling musicians, there's no way you could put into a pension fund.
Right.
So Local 1000 was chartered in 96 to make it easy for traveling musicians to sign a contract that is sent to our offices and to be able to contribute to a pension plan through the presenter or on
And
the presenter's behalf. And
it
I'm
also,
now collecting a pension. It's
cool.
not a big pension because I started later in my career. I've been in the union since I'm 16. Pete Seeger said, join the union. I did. But it didn't do me much good until I joined Local 1000 in
Okay.
1990.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a pension that I get every month, and you
It
can't be.
also sets standards for minimum
Yes,
pay and clean
exactly.
and safe. And I mean, there are some other, I've heard some horror stories about when a performer comes to, and I actually not so long ago went to a house concert and I showed up, and thank goodness I showed up. There was almost no one else there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
expectation of it, once I
Yeah.
travel there, it's going to be worth my time to
Right.
perform.
Yeah. Well, also, it's contract protection. In fact,
Yes.
20 years ago, I went to bat for one of our local members. I was living in Madison. I drove up to Green Bay to go to court several times to get so that this artist could get paid.
Wow.
And it ended up the producer declared bankruptcy, so the artist never got anything, but it set a precedent.
Yeah.
It was a case on the books. So
Wow.
we do go to bat for our artists, and that's
Yeah.
one of the big things. And also we're doing a fair trade music campaign, which is trying to get more venues to pay minimum wage and not just give you part of a door. At
Mhm.
least guarantee you can do door
Yes.
arrangements, but you have to guarantee minimum scale, which is $130. It's not a big deal for a house
Per
concert.
performer. So if a
Yeah.
duo or
No,
trio.
yeah. Well, it's a formula. It's not
Right.
it's
I
not
remember.
just
Yeah.
100, but yeah.
Right.
But it's these are things are valuable for touring musicians.
Yes. So let's pivot for a minute because it's so funny. People put me in the box of the P word. I hate the word politician, but she's a senator and that's what she does. And they're always
Yeah.
so surprised when they find out about my music or my Scrabble,
Right. Right.
competitions or whatever.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
have things. You're a singer-songwriter, but
Uh-huh.
you also paint and take commissions for painting
Yes.
and cooking. You're very serious. So why don't you speak briefly about each of those?
I started painting, I don't know, between 15 and 20 years ago. I've always been artistically inclined. My mother was a great artist, but I wanted to paint. And one of my songwriting students, was a painter. So we traded. She
Nice.
taught me how to paint. I said, well, I don't know what I'd paint. She says, well, paint your dogs.
Right.
So I did, and I have a feel for animals. So I'm in the middle of, I've got 4 paintings right now I have to get done in the next couple months. It's another great creative outlet that I
Yeah.
love. And in that same venue, I teach. I
Yeah.
teach in workshops. I teach online. I teach guitar and I teach songwriting. And these are things that you can do online. They're not as valuable as in person, but they work great. So I'm either teaching, I'm painting, I'm performing, I'm writing, And I also cook. I always say if I hadn't gone into music, I would have gone into the restaurant business, equally non-lucrative. But it is a passion of mine. And I released a cookbook many years ago because I had friends, when I left LA, I had friends who were sorry to see me go, not much so much that they were going to miss me, they were going to miss my cooking.
Your food, that's
So
funny.
I did cookbooks for everyone. And that one of those people had a publishing company. So we did it professionally, and I sold that cookbook for years.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we start to wrap up here, I invited you to be one of the 5 performers at the UnNaugural, and it was 5 performers raising money for 5 progressive causes. On the night of Donald Trump's inaugural, we had an UnNaugural, sold
Right.
out a 500 and something seat arena venue, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever done, I can say.
Me
And
too. That was amazing.
it was amazing. And on a night that we were all going to be so depressed, you know,
Yeah.
you and the other performers just lifted everyone up and inspired them. And then the next day was the Women's March downtown.
Right.
And so people
Exactly.
were just ready to go
Yep.
to battle and fight
Yeah.
for the next 4 years. Talk
Yeah.
about politics, talk about Donald Trump and the arts and music
Do I
in
have to?
any way you want. Yeah, I know. Well, God
I
forbid,
just want
right?
him to go away. I'm
I
worried.
know. I
I'm
know.
scared. I'm scared because because he's got these, it's unbelievable to me that he has so many supporters at this point.
Yes.
So it's a scary time because the arts are endangered, by people like Trump. They don't care about the arts. They don't care. All they care about is money. It's all they care about is making the next million. And that is we need to keep fighting. And that's what I love about what you do and what you were doing with those concerts. You brought it forward, and you brought politicians to this. You brought great musicians. We shared a space of feeling free, of feeling strong, of feeling that our fight was worth fighting. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep fighting. And that's why I work as much as I do. That's why I talk politics on my shows. That's why I'm always encouraging people, you've got to vote. Don't be, don't stay
Complacent.
home, get out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. No question. If anybody, yeah. Anyway, so everything's at stake. I mean,
Everything is at stake.
everything
Very
is
much
at
so.
stake.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. All right. Tret Fure, it is time for the Fast 5. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. And my staff came up with some really good ones. So I want to give them a shout out. So question number 1, who is an artist that people would be surprised to know that you really like as a fan of their music?
Oh, interesting.
Like outside the genre, maybe.
Gosh, well, forever, I don't know who they would not expect. I'm pretty predictable. I mean, I grew up on the Beatles. I love Sting. I love people like Cheryl Wheeler. I love people who say stuff, who are poets. So I don't venture much outside of that. I do listen to classical when I'm on the road, when I'm driving to soothe me. Not listening when I need to get away from the news. I put on classical.
Yes,
but I'm fairly predictable in my staying within the folk community and the heroes of before, Peter Gabriel, the Police, the Beatles, just like that. Yeah.
all right. So I think I should ask. It's not on my list. Are you a Swiftie? Or what do you think of Taylor Swift writing?
I haven't really listened to her much recently. I think what
Okay.
she's doing is beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
I think her, her rapport with her audience and how she's getting people to vote and how she
Yeah.
stands up for people and she shares her wealth. Those are the important things. That's what I admire about her, but I don't really listen to her music much.
Okay.
I should.
Question 2, what is the most unusual place you've ever had inspiration for a song?
On top of up in Bryan's Head, Utah. I was there for a yoga retreat and I had to write a song for my nephew's wedding, and I wrote one of probably the most played and loved song. It's called The Wedding Song. And that came from 7,000 feet. I was oxygen deprived, but this song.
Is it putting you on the spot if you want to sing a few lines?
Love is something none of us should ever take for granted. Love is something that we often do. It can shake you to the core, or it can turn the planet, or it can show up in an old soft shoe. So there you go. That's
so beautiful. Question 3. What's the funniest thing that ever happened at a live performance?
At a live performance. Well, that would probably be when Chris and I were touring in
Chris
Russia.
Williamson.
Yeah, Chris Williamson and I, we went to Russia right after the coup, and it was a phenomenal experience. But the funniest thing about all of it is every night these kids who loved country music and would build their own banjos, they kept asking me, "You like Roy Clark?" Every night, "You like Roy Clark?" And it just became a running joke, you know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Question number 4. If you could time travel and go backwards to any concert that's ever been performed, where would you want to be?
I would probably go back to the first Meg and Chris at Carnegie Hall. I was the band leader. I was the engineer. I was in the band, and I didn't really get to experience it like everyone else. I mean, you're talking 2,800 women and some men, back-to-back concerts at Carnegie Hall. Women were dressed to the nines. I was so busy going between the Union truck, the recording truck, and the stage and back and forth and making sure the band was taken care of. I didn't really get to appreciate it. I would just love to go back and sit in the audience and watch that show.
Nice, nice. Question number 5, Tret Fure, singer, songwriter, political activist, labor leader, painter, so much more. What is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
I can do a lot of things. That's the thing. I think, you know, for me, the longevity comes from my roots. I'm half Norwegian, half Italian, but I just have energy like no one I know. Especially people can't believe I'm 73. You know, and other than the fact that I just, you know, damaged my knee, I'm always doing things. I'm gardening, I'm touring, I'm walking, you know, I just feel like my superpower is my heritage. Is I know how to keep going, and I know how to stay. I come from a creative family, and I'm fortunate in that way.
It's awesome. Well, I am so grateful that you are out there in the world and in my life and in my concert series. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for taking time to kibitz today. It's been
My pleasure.
great fun.
Thanks, Cheryl.
See you soon. Take care.
Yep, you too.
And before I sign off, go to tretfure.com. You can commission a painting. You can download her music. You can figure out where she's touring. You can support her in so many ways. Check her out on social media. And after this, all her social media links are going to be on there. So please check out Tret Fure. You'll be glad you did. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.